On this day in history, we remember the remarkable individuals who shaped our world. Welcome to Who Died Today in History, where we honor their legacies. From artists to leaders, their impact lives on. If you find their stories meaningful, like, subscribe, and hit the bell to stay connected. Donna Summer, the Queen of Disco, passed away on May 17, 2012 at the age of 63 after a private battle with lung cancer. Though she had largely stepped back from the limelight in her later years, her death came as a shock to fans and fellow musicians around the world. Summer's passing was from natural causes, yet it symbolized the quiet fading of an era that had once pulsed with the beat of dance floors, mirror balls, and her unmistakable voice. Summer rose to prominence in the 1970s, a time of social change, liberation movements, and a cultural pivot towards self-expression through music, fashion, and nightlife. Disco, often dismissed by critics yet loved by millions, became a vehicle for marginalized communities, especially African Americans, Latinos, and the LGBTQ+ community, to find joy and identity. Donna Summer stood at the heart of this movement. Her music, sultry and empowering, reflected the hunger for freedom and pleasure amid a complex time of political unrest and cultural transformation. The immediate aftermath of her death saw an outpouring of tributes from artists across genres, acknowledging her trailblazing impact on pop, dance, and electronic music. While her passing did not dramatically shift historical trajectories, it did reawaken appreciation for disco's influence, especially as modern artists increasingly drew inspiration from that era. Tributes across the world, from impromptu dance parties to formal Grammy remembrances, underscored the enduring power of her artistry. Donna Summer's death illuminated the ephemeral nature of fame and the enduring nature of influence. Though disco itself was often derided or discarded by the mainstream after its peak, Summer's voice persisted as a cultural touchstone. Her legacy reflects how certain figures transcend genre or era, becoming symbols of emotion, freedom, and identity. In remembering her, society not only honored a performer, but revisited the ideals of the time she helped define. We immortalize Donna Summer not just through the continuous rotation of hits like Last Dance and Hot Stuff, but also through the revival of disco elements in contemporary music, documentaries that revisit her era, and inducting her into halls of fame that recognize her contributions. Her death reminds us that art, especially when it resonates with the human spirit, continues to echo long after the music stops. Randall, beloved for his impeccable comedic timing and urbane charm, died on May 17, 2004, at the age of 84 due to complications from pneumonia following heart bypass surgery. His death, while natural and not entirely unexpected given his age, marked the end of a career that bridged the golden age of television and the evolving entertainment landscape of the late 20th century. Randall's passing symbolized the fading of an era in which wit, sophistication, and theatrical polish defined a certain class of American actor. Best known for his portrayal of the fastidious Felix Unger in the television adaptation of The Odd Couple, Randall came to represent a style of comedy that prized dialogue, irony, and character over slapstick or spectacle. His death reflected a broader cultural shift, as television comedy increasingly embraced rapid pacing, irreverent tone, and edgier content. The elegance and restraint that Randall embodied seemed increasingly rare in the age of reality TV and shock humor. The immediate consequence of Randall's death was a wave of nostalgia and reflection. Tributes poured in not only from fellow actors and comedians, but also from viewers who had grown up with his performances. His legacy was not just one of laughs, but of a commitment to quality. In his later years, Randall had founded the National Actors Theater in New York, advocating for classic stage works and the nurturing of serious talent. His death left a void in this space, a reminder that cultural stewardship is often carried by individuals of singular vision. Randall's passing did not alter the course of history, but it did sharpen the public's awareness of what was being lost as media evolved. In honoring him, critics and fans alike were prompted to reassess the values of civility, artistry, and tradition in performance. Our relationship with mortality is often mediated by figures like Randall, those who remind us not only of the power of entertainment, but of the grace with which it can be delivered. He is immortalized through reruns, interviews, and the ongoing work of the theater he founded. In these ways, we preserve the memory of artists who helped shape our cultural consciousness, ensuring that their contributions continue to inspire future generations. Frank Gorshin, best remembered for his iconic portrayal of the Riddler on the 1960s Batman television series, died on May 17, 2005 at the age of 72. His death was attributed to complications from lung cancer, emphysema, and pneumonia, diseases that reflected both the era's heavy smoking culture and the toll it took on performers who spent decades under studio lights and on the road. His passing was not sudden or violent, but it came as a poignant end to a dynamic and often underappreciated career in show business. Gorshin's career spanned television, film, theater, and nightclubs. A gifted impressionist and energetic performer, he navigated a showbiz landscape that demanded versatility and resilience. His death, coming just days after finishing a stage run as George Burns in Say Goodnight Gracie, was emblematic of the commitment older performers of his generation had to their craft, working until the very end, often despite health challenges. In this way, Gorshin embodied a work ethic and passion that echoed the values of mid-20th century entertainers. The immediate consequence of his passing was a wave of appreciation and retrospection, particularly among fans of the Batman series and classic television. While Gorshin never achieved the same level of fame as some of his peers, his death reminded audiences of the powerful, often lasting influence of character actors who lend unforgettable flavor to iconic roles. His Riddler, manic and cerebral, helped define the campy yet clever tone of Batman, paving the way for future portrayals of comic book villains with psychological depth. Though his death did not shift historical tides, it did spotlight the legacy of television's golden age and the performers who helped shape it. For those who grew up in the 1960s, Gorshin's passing was more than just the loss of an actor. It was the fading of a specific cultural moment when primetime heroes and villains danced across brightly colored screens with theatrical flair. Frank Gorshin's memory endures not only in syndication and reruns, but in the broader comic book culture that continues to thrive. His contributions are honored at conventions, through collectibles, and in tributes by fans and fellow actors. His death, like many in the arts, invites us to consider how performance immortalizes the human spirit. Vivid, fleeting, but never truly gone. Donyale Luna, born Peggy Ann Freeman, died on May 17, 1979, at just 33 years old. Her death, attributed to a heroin overdose in Rome, marked a tragic end to a life of groundbreaking artistic triumph and profound personal struggle. Luna was the first African-American model to appear on the cover of British Vogue in 1966, symbolizing a radical shift in the fashion industry's perceptions of beauty and race. Yet her death, mired in the challenges of addiction and the often cruel pressures of fame, echoed the darker undercurrents of the 1970s. A time when the glamour of celebrity culture frequently masked deeper wounds. Luna emerged during the Civil Rights era, offering a surreal, almost otherworldly presence on international runways and in avant-garde films. As a black woman in a predominantly white, Eurocentric industry, she faced both adulation and marginalization. Her untimely death laid bare the contradictions of an era that celebrated progress and representation, but often failed to provide lasting support or acceptance for those who pioneered it. Addiction, particularly in the artistic and fashion communities of the 1970s, was a common, if unspoken, epidemic, reflecting both the era's libertine ethos and its underlying despair. The immediate consequence of her passing was a hushed mourning rather than a public outcry. Luna had, by the late 1970s, faded somewhat from the limelight, living in Europe and working intermittently. Yet her death has since gained symbolic resonance, especially in conversations around race, mental health, and the fleeting nature of fame. Today, her legacy is being reevaluated as cultural historians and fashion scholars recognize her pioneering impact and the barriers she helped dismantle. In death, Donyale Luna's mystique only deepened. She has been immortalized through photographs, documentaries, and recent retrospectives that frame her as both muse and martyr, a symbol of artistic brilliance constrained by societal limitations. Her story reminds us of how fame can illuminate yet isolate, and how those who challenge convention often carry heavy burdens. Ultimately, Luna's death speaks to humanity's longing to transcend, to be seen beyond the surface, and to leave a mark despite adversity. Through art, film, and remembrance, we continue to revisit her image, not just as a model, but as a mirror of the era's hopes, contradictions, and unfulfilled promises. Chinx, born Lionel Pickens, was a rising star in the world of hip-hop when his life was tragically cut short on May 17, 2015, in Queens, New York. The 31-year-old rapper was the victim of a violent drive-by shooting, gunned down in the early hours of the morning while sitting in his Porsche. This violent end mirrored a troubling pattern in the hip-hop industry, where promising talents, especially those from marginalized backgrounds, often face the twin specters of fame and street violence. Chinx's death was not only a personal tragedy, but also a grim reminder of the systemic issues that continue to affect inner-city communities: gun violence, socioeconomic disparities, and the lingering cultural tensions between authenticity and survival. He had begun to find mainstream recognition after years of grinding in New York's underground rap scene, closely associated with French Montana and the Coke Boys collective. Chinx's lyrics often reflected the harsh realities of his upbringing, blending ambition with raw depictions of struggle. His rise offered hope to many, a story of transformation through art and hustle. The immediate aftermath of his murder sent shockwaves through the music community. For many, his killing evoked painful memories of other fallen artists: Tupac Shakur, the notorious B.I.G., and more recently, Nipsey Hussle, whose lives were similarly stolen in their primes. Tributes poured in from fellow musicians, fans, and activists, lamenting the loss of another black artist to senseless violence. Chinx's posthumous album, Welcome to JFK, released just months after his death, became both a testament to his lyrical talent and a somber farewell from an artist who never reached his full potential. Chinx's death amplified his legend, transforming him from an emerging artist into a symbol of both hip-hop's promise and its peril. In murals, mixtapes, and memorials, his name lives on, etched into the cultural memory of a genre that often mourns its brightest stars far too soon. Ultimately, Chinx's passing underscores humanity's struggle to reconcile fame and vulnerability, especially in spaces where art grows from adversity. His legacy challenges us to confront the societal conditions that fuel such losses and reminds us of the fragile line between making it out and being taken too soon. We remember Chinx not just for the beats and rhymes, but for the life and potential he carried with him, a light now carried forward by those who knew him and those inspired by his journey. Harmon Killebrew, one of baseball's most revered power hitters, passed away on May 17, 2011, from esophageal cancer at the age of 74. His death was the result of a natural illness, but it carried deep emotional resonance within the sports world, especially among fans of America's pastime. Known for his quiet demeanor off the field and towering home runs on it, Killebrew's life and death reflected the values of a more humble, hard-working era of professional athletics, one marked by discipline, loyalty, and sportsmanship. Killebrew's career spanned 22 seasons, primarily with the Washington Senators and Minnesota Twins. He hit 573 home runs, earning him a place among baseball's all-time greats. Yet unlike many modern athletes, Killebrew maintained a modest public persona. His death did not come with scandal or controversy, but with dignity, announcing his decision to enter hospice care shortly before his passing. That public grace reminded fans of a time when athletes were community heroes rather than media celebrities. The immediate impact of Killebrew's passing was a wave of tributes from former teammates, sports writers, and fans. The Minnesota Twins, with whom he remains an enduring symbol, honored his legacy with memorial patches and moments of silence. His death served as a moment of reflection for the sport, a reminder of the enduring values that defined baseball during its golden mid-20th century era. It also highlighted the transition from an older generation of athletes who played for the love of the game to a modern era marked increasingly by commercialism and spectacle. Killebrew's death did not radically shift the course of history, but it did amplify the appreciation of his legacy. In life, he was admired. In death, he was immortalized. His name remains enshrined in the National Baseball Hall of Fame, but more importantly, in the hearts of fans who saw in him a model of quiet greatness. The death of Harmon Killebrew invites a broader reflection on how we remember those who shaped our cultural landscapes, not through fame or controversy, but through consistent excellence and integrity. In murals, biographies, and the sacred spaces of baseball stadiums, we continue to honor such figures. They remind us that mortality, while inevitable, cannot erase the power of a life lived with purpose, humility, and quiet brilliance. Shad Gaspard, a former WWE wrestler and real-life hero, died tragically on May 17, 2020, in a violent accident that underscored both his personal values and the stark unpredictability of life. While swimming with his son at Venice Beach, California, Gaspard was caught in a strong rip current. Lifeguards responded quickly, and Shad's last act was directing rescuers to save his 10-year-old son first. Moments later, Gaspard was pulled under the waves and did not resurface. His body was found 3 days later, washed ashore. He was 39. Gaspard's death resonated as a modern-day act of selfless heroism, mirroring ideals of courage, sacrifice, and fatherhood. In an era often overshadowed by self-promotion and celebrity culture, his final moments stood in quiet defiance of that narrative, showcasing a man who, when faced with mortality, chose instinctively to protect others. His death did not just reflect the dangers of nature, but illuminated the core values he carried through life: loyalty, strength, and love. The immediate aftermath of his death saw an outpouring of grief and admiration from the wrestling community, fans, and media. Tributes poured in from WWE stars and organizations alike, and Gaspard was honored posthumously with the WWE Warrior Award in 2022, an accolade celebrating those who exhibit unwavering strength and perseverance. His legacy was also championed by those outside wrestling, who saw in his sacrifice a symbol of true heroism, far beyond the scripted storylines of the ring. Though Shad Gaspard was not a world champion in wrestling, his final act etched his name into public memory in a way that few accolades could. His death amplified his legend, not through fame or spectacle, but through a singular moment of unmistakable humanity. In life, he entertained millions. In death, he inspired them. Shad's passing compels us to reflect on the fragility of life and the lasting power of personal values. It demonstrates how the measure of one's legacy is often found not in how they lived publicly, but in how they acted when no cameras were rolling. We immortalize figures like Shad through stories, commemorative awards, and the impact they leave on our collective conscience. His legacy reminds us that in the face of mortality, the greatest power lies in selfless love. Johann Michael Bach, a member of the prolific Bach musical dynasty and father-in-law to the legendary Johann Sebastian Bach, passed away on May 17, 1694, in Geren, Germany. His death, reportedly from natural causes, was relatively quiet compared to the sweeping political or dramatic demises of historical giants. Yet it symbolized a closing chapter in a generation that bridged the Renaissance and the Baroque, an era marked by intense artistic devotion and religious expression in music. Johann Michael served as the organist and town clerk of Geren, roles that intertwined civic duty and sacred responsibility. His music, deeply rooted in Lutheran theology, reflected the values of the post-Reformation era, where composers were tasked with not just entertaining but edifying through their craft. His sacred works, including motets and chorale preludes, were contemplative and complex, offering spiritual solace to a community shaped by religious upheaval. His death did not cause public upheaval or major cultural shift, but it had a quiet, lasting impact through his family legacy. His daughter Maria Barbara would marry Johann Sebastian Bach, and his musical manuscripts were absorbed into the younger Bach's repertoire and study. In this way, Johann Michael's influence lived on, shaping the future of Western music through the genius of his son-in-law. The continuation of his musical lineage through Johann Sebastian speaks to how creativity and devotion often pass quietly between generations, sometimes only recognized retrospectively. Though largely overshadowed by his more famous relatives, Johann Michael's work and passing remind us of the countless artists whose contributions are not immediately celebrated but are essential to the foundation of greatness. His music is still performed today, especially in liturgical settings, offering a testament to the quiet power of faith, art, and tradition. Johann Michael Bach's death, while modest in its historical footprint, reveals a more intimate view of mortality, not as spectacle, but as transition. It prompts reflection on how we remember those whose lives fed into larger currents of cultural transformation. We honor such figures through continued performance of their work, scholarly study, and the lineage of inspiration they leave behind. In this way, memory and legacy are preserved not by noise, but by the echo of harmony across centuries.